it's the same with the Palestine-Israel issue, which is very complicated. And when I'm asked about it, I always say that I actually don't know, because I'm busy with South Africa's problems. It's the same when they ask me, am I glad that Biden won or that Trump is competing or whatever? I don't care.
The 360 Experience with Thomas M.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the 360 Experience with myself, Thomas Mabaso. Today, I have a member of parliament. I guess this is my biggest interview to date. Today, I have a member of parliament and Freedom Farm Plus's head of elections, Mr. Wouter Wessels. Sir, how are you?
Good in yourself. Thank you so much for having me. It's a big privilege. I follow your channel and you do very good work.
Thank you so much. Man. We know that the Freedom Farm Plus just went to the big manifesto. What were your key takeaways from that manifesto?
Well, our manifesto is based on a building plan. We say that we need to restore South Africa. We are in trouble. Economically, we're in trouble. Our fiscus is in trouble. There's no money left. Revenue is too little, and our expenditure is a lot. There's a social plight. People are poor. People are hungry. And we need to restore and build wealth for all South Africans to share in, and part of that is building equal opportunities for all. So that is the base, or what the manifesto is based on at the end of the day.
Yeah. I remember Dr Kaval said something that caught people's attention. He said that African National Congress has designed a new apartheid, and a lot of people were quite angry about it. Would you like to clarify what exactly Dr. Kaval meant when he said that the African National Congress has basically created a new apartheid?
Well, what the Freedom Front Plus says is that we acknowledge the fact that a lot of, and the majority of South Africans with an abundance of potential were left behind because of inadequacies in the previous system. But there's a lot of South Africans, millions of South Africans, that is once again being left behind and disadvantaged because of inadequacies in the system. And there's a new type of inequality that's being created. There's a black elite enrichment that has been taking place. And we can actually call it cadre enrichment. But it's not much different from the previous regime, where there was, if you weren't a member of the Dutch Reformed Church, you struggled to get a job. My father struggled to get a job because he wasn't a member of the Dutch Reformed Church. If you weren't a member or knew someone in the Broederbond, you wouldn't be advantaged, regardless of your skin color. Afrikaners were also disadvantaged at that stage, but that's now a side note or a footnote. But the fact of the matter is that currently, if you're not a card-carrying cadre, and you don't really have the joy of being in that class of getting a tender, then you're left behind. Black economic empowerment has not empowered the majority of South Africans. It empowered a small elite, and it has created an inequality between that elite and the majority of South Africans, and that is what he meant by a new apartheid.
Yeah. So do you think that Mr. Kaval, the reason why people were so mad at what he said, does it have to do with the fact that he's an Afrikaner man and not the fact that he's telling the truth?
Well, obviously and definitely, and that's why it's very important to converse about this, because a lot of our problems in South Africa is based on the fact that we judge a book by its cover, to use the cliche. We judge not what someone says, but who they are and what skin color they are or their background. And we don't actually judge the merit of what is being said. And we don't listen to each other. And that's why your program, for instance, is very important. And similar programs as well, that gives an opportunity to converse about important issues, because we have to evaluate what is the actual problems in South Africa and what's the cause thereof. We can't be stuck in the past. We have to acknowledge that there was a lot of wrongs in the past and we have to learn from it. But we can't repeat those wrongs and then just blame the past. And what the current government is doing is they are following the same recipe as the National Party, and we are getting the same results. We are getting the same inequality, and we're not moving forward. And the economy is being diminished, and people are suffering, and we need a rethink of how we empower, how we actually do empowerment, and how we tackle the plights of poverty and inequality at the end of the day.
So how do we move from this? Because I know that even me having this interview with you, some people will come and say, yeah, you are giving Freedom Fund Plus an opportunity, a platform to speak. But as a country, how do we move from this? How do we start listening to each other and not looking at the fact that I'm a black man, you are an African man? How do we get to that position where we can actually have conversations with each other besides looking at our skin colors?
No, I think the majority of South Africans, 90% of South Africans from all groups, are people that respect each other and that actually in the normal day-to-day lives get along. I mean, it's just when you start talking politics, and it's a lot of the time it's political leaders from all sides that use racial rhetoric to polarize different groups against each other. And I think we should stop that. That is scapegoat politics, and it's very easy. It's easy for me to get people on their feet by talking a lot of propaganda and spreading hatred. It's much more difficult to say, what is the actual problems, and let's find solutions. Let's go back to values where we respect each other and where we listen to each other and where we actually build together. Because we are a beautiful country with beautiful people with a lot of potential from all races and all creeds and all communities, and we can work together to really make this country great. And I really do believe we need each other. And I think that is one of the biggest obstacles, is that a lot of the time it boils down to people that think that when you talk about new solutions, or when you talk politics, you mean that other political parties or other races or other creeds or other communities should be wiped out. The Freedom Front Plus is of opinion that we should build. We shouldn't break down. We shouldn't damage relations. We should build on multilingualism. We should build on our diversity. We can achieve real unity in our diversity. It shouldn't only be something that's in the preamble to the Constitution. It should be something that we really live. And once again, I do believe that 90% of South Africans do live that each day. There is unity in our diversity. It's on a political front most of the time that we don't achieve that.
Yeah, because I know that Freedom Fund Plus is one of those political parties that has been attacked for the longest time of being an Afrikaner-only political party. So by listening to you, I can hear that Freedom Fund Plus wants to cater for all of us, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. We have members from all communities. We have councillors from different races and different communities. We have public representatives. We have branches and branch chairpersons and representatives. Fact of the matter is, we stand for certain policies. That does not mean that we are Afrikaner exclusive. Let's, for instance, take self-determination. When we talk about self-determination, we're not saying that self-determination is an Afrikaner thing. It's a constitutional right. All communities should have the right to self-determination as provided for in Section 235. It's not an exclusive Afrikaner thing. When we talk about multilingualism, or when we talk about mother tongue education, a lot of people hear and have the perception that we are saying Afrikaans. We're not. We're saying all languages, and I said it in Parliament a week ago. It's a shame that 30 years down the road, after the dawn of democracy, a child can still only go to school in Afrikaans or English. That's a shame. All 11 official languages should be developed to the level where a child can go to school, finish matric, and go to university in the language of his or her choice. That is what we fight for. We fight for true multilingualism. That's why our manifesto is available in all 11 official languages. Show me another party whose manifesto is available in other languages than English. I think even the ANC's manifesto is only in English. I might be mistaken.
Yeah. So I know that for the past few weeks, you guys have been collecting signatures, you have been campaigning around. So I want to ask you, in terms of young people, do you see young people gravitating towards the Freedom Fund Plus?
We do. In 2019, we made inroads. We grew from 4 representatives in Parliament to 12. And we grew in votes, obviously, from under 100,000 to just under 500,000. And a lot of people said we got that vote from the Democratic Alliance. Yes, there were certain people that made the decision to rather vote for us than the DA. But our research picked up that a lot of our new voters were rather people that were first-time voters, young voters. In 2021 as well, and in by-elections where we won wards as well. And we have a lot of new young youth members that are joining daily and that are on our lists and that are competing to be representatives after this election. And I hope we do well enough that a lot of them are elected, because we need younger representatives because times are changing. And we need those voices as well. We need experienced people as well. We can't get rid of, or should get rid of, people that have experience and knowledge and can use those skills to better South Africa and that knowledge to better South Africa. But we also need the younger voice and the younger way of thinking to provide modern solutions to the problems we are facing.
Yeah, because speaking of young people, you know that young people in South Africa today are the biggest victims of unemployment. Young people are not employed in South Africa. Why do you think is that way? And what is Freedom Fund Plus going to do in terms of remedying that? Because the country cannot go on like this. Young people are not employed. They are killing themselves. They are taking their lives. They are turning into drug addicts. They are turning into drunkards. What is Freedom Fund Plus going to do in terms of remedying all of that?
We have a very serious unemployment crisis, but it's because of a lack of opportunities. And then there's a double problem. Firstly, there's a lack of job opportunities, so we need economic growth to ensure that there's job creation. And then we have a plan with regards to real solutions that can get the economy going, because just addressing youth unemployment won't help. We need to create employment opportunities, and to create economic growth, just quickly, you need 2 big things, and that is a reliable electricity supply and infrastructure and service delivery. So you need to restore those 2 things, and then there's a few other points where you need to get rid of needless regulations. There's a lot of regulations currently that's really needless and just a barrier to entrepreneurship, to starting businesses, and to creating jobs. We need labor legislation reform so that an employee is still protected against exploitation, but at the same time, employers are, it's easier and will be easier for employers to create jobs, because currently it's not. But then the other side of it is that because of a lack of decent education and access to education, younger people are also unemployed, because when an employer only has 1 or 2 job opportunities or jobs to offer because of the lack of economic growth and the financial uncertainty, then he won't offer that job to a younger person because the younger person lacks skills. Let's look at our literacy rate. 84% of grade 4 pupils can't read with comprehension. We have a serious problem. It's the highest in the world. So we need to address our education system. Once again, and we get a lot of criticism, people say it's an old way of thinking. But it's a proven fact academically that if you have mother tongue education, you'll do better in all other languages. You know, if you understand and learn in your own language, your mother tongue, you'll be better in English. You'll be better in other languages. It's because we don't do that. We force a child to, from the start, go to school in English, and we think it's very grand. But then the child can't spell, can't read, can't comprehend what they're actually reading, and that's why we have such a high dropout rate. So a huge component of the youth unemployment, the 63% youth unemployment, is people that has not completed matric. They dropped out. And our dropout rate is also one of the highest in the world. So we need to address quality education by introducing mother tongue education, but also community-based education. Currently, education is centralized. We need to give communities, parents, the decision-making about their schools and give the ownership of schools to parents and communities. And that will already better our education system from where we are currently.
Yeah. So, do you think that Freedom Farm Plus has done enough in terms of rallying this message to the people?
Well, we're trying to. And at the end of the day, it's very important getting to people on the ground. And we have a lot of activists working on the ground, conveying this message and telling people what the actual important issues are and what the solutions are that the Freedom Farm Plus provides. So I do believe we're trying to, but there's a lot of people that doesn't necessarily want to listen. And yeah, we must address that and try to get past the misconceptions. But we really, if we get, and I think we also prove it where we govern. Where we govern in coalitions, there's a lot of municipalities after the 2021 elections where we govern in coalition governments, and we've proven that we are there for all communities. Look at Tshwane, where we have the MMC for health. We do a lot of work to better the clinics and the primary health care in Shishangove and in other communities, Hammanskraal and so forth. And I think the work that we do in Tshwane in particular, but in other municipalities as well, prove that we do have solutions, that we are a service delivery driven party, and that we provide and better the lives of all residents and try and attempt to do that.
Yeah, and thank you, Mary. You have already answered a few questions that I wanted to ask, but it's okay because the other thing that I want us to talk about is the issue of crime. South Africa is riddled with crime. What is what we can see, what is happening right now in South Africa? We can see even with the Minister of Police what is happening in South Africa. So what is Freedom Farm Plus going to do?
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Okay, I was saying that what is Freedom Farm Plus going to do to fight crime in South Africa? Because South Africa is completely riddled with crime. Everything is out of control. We don't have the borders. People are living in the townships. Illegal immigrants are doing as they please in the townships. So what is Freedom Farm Plus going to do in terms of fighting that? Because right now we are facing a huge problem in South Africa, especially as the people in the townships, because the people in the townships, as soon as they say anything about the illegal immigrants that are committing crimes in their neighborhoods, the people are naming them xenophobic and all sorts of things. So what is Freedom Farm Plus going to do in terms of addressing that?
We need to firstly restore the integrity of our borders. We need to really look at our border control. You know, it's senseless that we send soldiers to peace missions in the DRC, whilst as part of SADC. It's very noble, but we don't have the money. We should rather use our soldiers and use the South African Defence Force to control our borders and restore our border integrity. We need to get rid of corruption and fraud when it comes to our bribery, when it comes to our border control. And also, there's a lot of fences and so forth that's paid for and procured by government where there's tender corruption, and then the fences never built. And there's our integrity of our borders are in shambles. So we need to restore that. Then, with regards to policing, but also with regards to border control, one of the big things is that a lot of our crime is gang related, especially here in the Western Cape. A lot of the crime is gang related, and it's because of illegal firearms and drugs that come over our borders. So that's also why border control is so important. Then we need to restore the police service to a professional service that's really there to ensure the safety of our citizens. We need to employ and appoint the best people suited in the best positions in the police service. It doesn't help that someone is appointed a general or the police commissioner that has no police experience. So that is very important. And then police officers should be equipped efficiently. There's a lot of police officers that really do try to do their job, but they don't have resources. They're in rural communities where they don't even have a vehicle. How must they patrol? How must they go to a crime scene? They can't. There's a lack of resources, but there's not a lack of money. That's an ill conception, that there's a lack of money. There's enough, but a lot of money is spent on wrong budget priorities within police. One example is, why is the budget of the VIP police unit, ministers and deputy ministers and speakers and mayors of municipalities, so high? It's higher than the organized crime budget. That's why we have a problem. So there must be a reprioritization, enough resources within the budget that there is, and then there's a need for specialized units. We need to bring back units such as the Scorpions, but we also need prosecution-based units and organized crime units to really address human trafficking. Human trafficking is something that a lot of South Africans do not realize how big a problem it actually is. And a lot of our crimes related to that. We need to address that. We need to address gang-related crime, drug-related crime, illegal firearms, and therefore, or for that, we need specialized units. So that is some of the plans that we will install or we will implement and that we have.
Yeah, you mentioned something very important about the borders. Do you think that South African foreign policy is actually putting us in danger? If you think about the fact that we don't have the borders in South Africa, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I was watching an interview, I think on ENCA, they were talking with Moeletsi Mbeki. And Moeletsi Mbeki said that, you know, South Africa is sending the soldiers to the DRC to fight whatever they are fighting for in the DRC. What if some of those guys in the M23 come back to South Africa and sneak into South Africa, plant the mine bombs, and go back to Rwanda? So do you think that South African foreign policy, looking at the stances that we are taking towards DRC, towards Israel, do you think that these people that are in government today, they are putting us in danger?
They are. And one of the big thing is, and the July 2021 unrests prove that we don't have sufficient intelligence in South Africa. You know, our intelligence should pick up those type of things. But we've had in recent years terrorist cells in South Africa, terrorist flows of illicit funds through South African bank accounts, funding operations of ISIS and so forth. Those are the type of things that do need to be addressed. That's why we're on the grey list, for instance, as well, because we don't have the necessary mechanisms to actually address that. But the border control as well. because there's illegal immigration that's taking place, we're opening ourselves up for those type of activities as well. And that's a big risk for South Africa. And once again, why send troops to other places in Africa whilst we don't have the fiscal means? We don't have budget. We don't have money, but we're spending money on that. And even with that, those poor soldiers are sent to the DRC without efficient equipment. They don't even have enough clothing when they sent there. They don't have the correct boots. They don't have any Air Force reinforcement. So they're going there into a battlefield without actually providing for them with the actual equipment you need out of a defense point or a battle point. So it's senseless. We need foreign policy where we say, firstly, we need to look after ourselves first. And I don't want to sound like politicians in the USA, and a particular one, but we need to put South Africa first. Obviously, we have a lot of needs. And it's the same with the Palestine-Israel issue, which is very complicated. And when I'm asked about it, I always say that I actually don't know, because I'm busy with South Africa's problems. It's the same when they ask me, am I glad that Biden won or that Trump is competing or whatever? I don't care. I don't care about US politics. I know it's short-sighted. We have to know what's happening in the world. But we really first need to address the problems in South Africa. I don't understand the complexity of Gaza. I'm not an expert. I don't. And I don't think the South African government is either. But we must be experts, firstly, on the problems and the plights of South Africans before we try to assist. One of the biggest problems in South Africa in the years that it was going well, where progress was made post-1994, is if you go and analyze it, President Thabo Mbeki started to become this savior of Africa and the world. And a lot of resources from South Africa and time and expertise was invested in the rest of Africa to solve conflicts and so forth. It's very noble once again. But in that time,
sorry, you cut for a second. You can continue.
I lost you again. In that time, where a lot of resources were rather spent on the rest of the world, and I'm talking about the early 2000s, the plight of South Africans got worse. And that's where I think, and then obviously after 2009, things got a lot worse. But we were on a downward trajectory actually because of the fact that we were more concerned about the rest of Africa than about South Africa. We shouldn't make the same mistake. We're continuing with that mistake, and even worse, because now it's going very bad in South Africa. And now we're spending money on an international court case with regards to Israel and Palestine and Gaza. And it's very good and humane and everything. But could that money have not been better spent to build houses, to get rid of the bucket system at schools, to build more schools? All of that, 6 billion rand could have been spent a lot better. There's a lot of richer countries in the world that could have done that case, for instance.
No. Yeah, the whole thing that really surprises me about South Africa being so concerned about this whole thing about what is happening between Israel and Palestine is because, like, the Middle East countries are not doing as they are half or even a fraction of what South Africa is doing. None of those countries in the Middle East are stepping up like South Africa is doing. So this is the reason why I sit back every day and I'm like, why are we doing this? If when the people that are there in the Middle East, the people who can actually understand the conflict way better than we can ever think, but these people are choosing to step on the side instead of doing anything. So, Mr. Vessels, the other thing I want us to talk about is the issue of national health insurance. So what is your take on that?
Well, in an ideal world, universal healthcare is very good, and it provides access for all citizens to quality health care. But if you go and look, there's certain prerequisites for that. One of it, and that's an international practice, is that you need a functioning public healthcare system for that to work. That's the first one. Secondly, you actually need a small gap between rich and poor. So your inequality shouldn't be very, very high. We don't have either of those two. There's other requisites as well, but those are the two most important ones. And the problem is when you then implement something like national health insurance, you're going to create a situation where more South Africans will have to make use of public health care. Now that sounds nice, and it's even been said in Parliament by I think the Deputy Minister of Health, is now all South Africans or more South Africans will have to go to public hospitals and will have to, it will enhance equality. It sounds good, but the problem is now the burden on that public health care will get even more, which means you'll have less functioning hospitals and less resources, and poor people that currently are dependent on public health care, can't afford anything else, can't afford medical aids, will get less health care because of the burden that's getting more. So we're not ready for national health insurance. We need to invest. And the other point as well is national health insurance is really just an election promise that's not going to realize because there's no money. If you go and look at the budget that was tabled in February, provision for national health insurance. So the president says, bring me a pen, I'm going to sign the legislation, but there's no provision in the budget. How does, and it's going to cost almost 3 trillion rand to implement national health insurance. We don't have that money. So it's an empty promise and it's actually misleading. But if government will then say they're going to implement a system, and that's what it's going to get to, where from your salary as an employee, you're going to have a compulsory deduction that's going to the national health insurance. And it's going to be on a scale where the more you earn, the more you pay. Also sounds quite noble. But the problem is, it's going to create more poverty. I said yesterday in Parliament that the plight of the unemployed is very, very bad. And it's a crisis. But there's another crisis that's unfolding currently, where people that are employed are also suffering because of the high cost of living. So people with a job can't afford to do anything. They can't spend money. They're indebted. They're going hungry, even if they have a job. And there's millions of South Africans in those positions currently because of the high cost of living, high interest rates, and so forth. Now you want to implement such a compulsory thing. Currently, if it goes bad, I can cancel, or someone in that position can cancel their medical aid. You won't be able to opt out of national health insurance. It's going to create more poverty, and it's going to create less spending, less economic activity, which will lead to unemployment. So now it's again a vicious cycle, an unintended consequence, if you want, where it's being said that this is for the poor. But the poor is going to suffer even more because more people will be dependent. They're going to get less access to healthcare. Public hospitals will be in a worse state than they are currently. And then there's going to be less employment opportunities and people are going to be more unemployed. So this is not going to solve the crisis of South Africa. We need to firstly address public healthcare, invest in public healthcare, and really get infrastructure going, but also appoint the best people to do it. Currently, we're employing chief executive officers of hospitals that do not have medical qualifications, and they don't have any managerial experience. Managerial experience. So that is why our hospitals are in the state that they are in. Let's firstly address that. And then in 10 years' time, we can talk about universal healthcare when we really get quality healthcare to the people out there, and then that can be an option, but not currently. It's going to make it worse.
You know that they're going to accuse you of not wanting poor people to have a proper health care.
But it's not. I really do want people to have proper healthcare. And you know what we need to invest in? And that is something that we can learn from a country like Cuba. Is we need to invest in primary healthcare. We need to invest in preventative healthcare. And that is why our clinics are at this point in time malfunctional. Why? Because they reside under municipalities and there's very little budget for our clinics. We need to invest in getting primary healthcare better. Qualified nurses, people that really care, primary healthcare providers that are employed there and deployed there and really provide preventative healthcare services. Then our healthcare will already be better. But no, I do want everybody to have access to quality healthcare as the Constitution provides. But currently people are dying in hospitals. And it's also not going that much better. And I'm going to be, I'm not going to be popular to say this, but it's not going much better in private hospitals in a lot of places around the country because the plight is high and our qualifications are also not good, but that's all.
All right. You spoke about the election promises. You know, one of the things that I've been observing about the political parties in South Africa in terms of the election promises is that people have been talking a lot about the social grants. You remember President Ramaphosa came out and said that if people do not vote for the African National Congress, they're going to lose the social grants. The EFF came out and said that people must make babies because the economic freedom fighters, they're going to double the social grants. So going into the elections, what is your take on the social grants as a Freedom Fund Plus?
Well, it's not an achievement when you say we've increased the number of people that are now receiving social grants. It's not an achievement of any government. And it's really ludicrous that the ANC government is saying that it's an achievement. What you want to hear from a government is that this year, less people are dependent on social grants. Why? Because the social grants is not sustainable. And it's also not enough. And it will never actually be enough. That is not wealth creation. It's keeping someone just on a basic grant. It's actually a crime. What you want is job opportunities, and that once again you can only achieve if there's economic growth, and that you can only achieve if there's the correct policies and policy certainty and policies that really create a system where there's investment and expansion of our private sector. So what we do say is that we need to, and there's one grant that's very, very important. Others are also. But there's one grant that the ANC government has left behind, and that's the foster care grant. You know, it's a shame. A child is by the court ordered and placed in the protective custody of a foster parent or foster care, a children's home or a person or whatever. But that grant is not enough to actually look after that child. You know, that grant comes down to something like 35 Rand a day per child. Can you look after a child? Can you provide food for a child with 35 Rand? You can't. So that grant needs to be increased. Our disability grant needs to be increased. Our old age grant at this stage needs to be increased. In the long term, you also want a situation where less people are dependent on an old age grant because they made provision, because they had a job, can have a pension fund and they're not dependent on government. And then childcare grants in general as well. Other grants at this stage should be increased, but we should also be cognizant of the fact that we don't have money. The fiscus does not have money. We're borrowing money, we're indebted, we have a budget deficit. So it doesn't help to promise that you'll double grants or you'll give more grants and so forth. We need to grow the economy so that we get people off grants, so that we can provide there where there's really social distress, but people that can be employed wants to be employed. I know of there's people, but most people want to restore their dignity with a job, earning a living, providing for their family. And that is what we should focus on. Not promising grants and saying we'll expand grants and make more people dependent on it. We must make less people dependent on it.
Yeah. So, one of the things that the South Africans are feeling is that the South African government is not transparent with the people of this country. So I feel like transparency is one of those things that people are actually concerned about. So if a Freedom Fund Plus actually wins the elections, how are you guys going to be transparent with the people of this country? Because right now, the people don't feel like the governing party is being transparent with them with anything.
Well, we believe that we have to restore our institutions of democracy firstly. That means our legislatures, parliament, the dignity of parliament, the work of parliament, keeping the executive to account, oversight, public participation. All of those functions needs to be bettered and restored. There's a lot left behind because of Parliament not functioning as it should. We need to also look at petitions. The public petitions Parliament, but a petition takes 5 years to even serve before the National Assembly. We need to address that. And then all tenders and contracts needs to be published and needs to be scrutinized by the public. There's too much secrecy when a tender is awarded. But let me give one example of why it's not published and why it's kept secret. There's a small municipality in the Free State called Letsemeng. And this is also actually boils down to black economic empowerment. Letsemeng is a poor municipality. People are suffering. There's water crises. There's service delivery crises. They awarded a contract based on black economic empowerment to a company for travel arrangements for the speaker and the mayor, costing extravagant amounts. Just a flight ticket from Bloemfontein to Johannesburg, they were charged more than 20,000 Rand for. That's ridiculous. If you buy it yourself, it won't cost you 3,000 Rand, if so much. But the company they gave that contract to is not in Letsemeng. So firstly, you're not empowering. It's not black economic empowerment of the people in Letsemeng. It's a company in Gauteng. That company is not a travel agent. They make films. And that is what black economic empowerment is doing. And that is what the tender process is doing. It's not transparent, and they're keeping it secret because there's a reason for it. Because they are allowing government departments and municipalities and all levels of government to be exploited, but not in the interest of the people, in the interest of a select few, and they're not empowering local communities. So what we are saying is transparency with contracts, transparency with tenders, and give a tender and a contract to the best deserving candidate. And firstly, give preference to local suppliers. And that's the type of things why there's no transparency and why we would install transparency.
Yes. The other issue, I want us to leave these formal issues aside. I want us to talk about the multi-party. How is the multi-party doing right now? Because I have to be honest with you, for the longest time, I came on the platform and I actually criticized you guys, and I said that the multi-party, according to me, it has failed to move as one, because I thought that when you guys signed the pact and decided that you're going to come together as one, I thought that all of you're going to do things like S1. Maybe, for an example, if Freedom Fund Plus does a rally, then UIM will bring their supporters, Action SA, IFP, all of you guys will bring your supporters to all of your rallies. So this is what I thought would happen, but it looks like that's not how it happened. And I said that freedom, multi-party charter is not united as they would like to be. How fair is my criticism?
Okay, let me start off by saying what the multi-party charter is a pre-election agreement between political parties. And it's not an amalgamation of parties. Because I know there's a lot of people that think that you need to unite and form one big political party, or these splinter parties or multitude of different political parties are bad for actually consolidating and maybe doing something and maybe winning the ANC and so forth. But it's not. Because we are a diverse country, not only in terms of race and religion and language and so forth, we're also diverse in terms of how we think, our economic outlook, our economic circumstances, and so forth. That's why you need different political parties. And that's why the Constitution was also written to promote multi-party democracy. So what the multi-party charter is not saying we're all forming one formation. What it's saying is there is a possibility to form coalitions after this election. And those coalition governments can be unstable and can be worse than what we currently have. We're not naive when it comes to that. We know that a coalition is a very volatile form of government, but it can also be better. It can be better than what we currently have, and it can be a form of government that actually hears the voices of different communities, different outlooks, and actually provide a government for all people and for more people and the majority of people. But then you need to have a pre-election agreement already and agree on certain issues, because remember, after the election results are promulgated, you only have 14 days to form a government. 14 days. We saw with local government elections that it's very difficult negotiating from scratch when those election results come out and you see this is a reality and this is the parties that's going to form part of this to form a government, to then negotiate everything. It's very, very difficult, and it creates problems and it creates more instability. So this is an attempt to already agree upon certain basic principles. And then after election, those negotiations will be easier. But obviously, we already formed certain policy positions together. We have our differences, we have different manifestos, we have different rallies, as you say. But we do have combined rallies and combined events as well. Every 2 weeks, we have an issue, and we give the broad sense and communicate the position of the multi-party charter on those issues, so that South Africans know that they can vote for one of the parties in this formation, and that those values and those policy stances will be promoted. It gives hope that you don't have to vote for the biggest party. You can vote for any party in that multi-party charter, and it will contribute to a better government, to better governance, and to those policies that do provide solutions.
Yeah. I remember when the multi-party was announced, one of the things that was said is that this formation, their purpose is to get rid of the African National Congress, because the country cannot afford having the ANC in government no more. Like we are literally on our knees. But the question that people have been asking for a long time is that what is going to happen if the multi-party does not reach the threshold that they want? Are you guys going to dissolve, or are you going to still stick together?
But at the end of the day, a coalition is formed for different reasons. And, if you look at political science and the theory, a coalition also exists as opposition parties. And it is possible, and it will be, and we've already discussed that in the pledge that we also that we undertook in August last year when we had the Multiparty Charter convention, we said that after the elections, if we can't form a government, we will then continue as a formation and try to continue as a formation so that we can also provide very coordinated opposition. Because remember, if the ANC does win, if the ANC forms a coalition with another smaller party or other party and does obtain the threshold of 50+1, they will be just about 50%. And it will be very important to have a very coordinated opposition then. You know, at the moment, the ANC governs in the National Assembly with 57%. We've already, in this term, had the situation and the successes where we could vote down certain very nonsensical appointments because we work together and because we said, let's put our political differences aside for now, but let's just vote on these issues principled, and we get the ANC and we do certain strategic moves to get certain legislation changed, get certain legislation voted down, to get appointments voted down. It's going to be much easier, but also put the challenge there that we'll have to work together. So there'll be that coordination after the election, and then obviously in certain provinces, there's different permutations. In one province, the multi-party charter or certain of the parties of the multi-party charter might govern together. On national level, we might not, or on national level, we will, and in certain provinces not. So let's see what the election holds and what the results say. But we do have hope, and there is hope if the electorate goes out and go and vote. Don't stay at home. That's the most important message here.
Yeah, so as the head of elections for Freedom Farm, what is the state of readiness within the party? How ready are you guys for the upcoming elections?
Sometimes I hope the election is tomorrow. And other days I hope the election is in a year's time. But no, we are ready. On a serious note, an election campaign is actually run for 5 years. It's not now. And an election campaign, a real election campaign, is where you deliver and where you assisted the electorate, where you provided opposition as you pledged to or as you promised to, and the mandate that you were given with the previous election, where you deliver on that mandate. That is the actual election campaign. And I believe that our public representatives really does well. They do well. They really provide solutions. Even when we are where we are in opposition in municipalities, we service residents and provide solutions to municipal problems. And I really do believe that has made us ready. That is why we grew in the 2021 elections. That's why we win wards. And we are already on the campaign trail telling people and spreading the message. And the most important thing is to activate people to go and vote and not to stay at home. Because if you don't go and vote, then you're really not utilizing your democratic right, which a lot of people fought for very hard. And then you can't complain. It sounds simple, but you're really not allowed to complain if you don't go and make your voice heard. And it will help. And just quickly, the very easy sum is, if you take 10 voters and 5 votes for the ANC and 5 votes opposition, then we're 50-50. Any opposition party, but we're 50-50. But if one opposition voter stays away and says, no, I'm going to have a braai, I'm not going to go and vote, I'm not going to go and stand in the queue, it doesn't make a difference, and so forth, then the ANC still gets 5 votes. But now the opposition only gets 4. And now all of a sudden it's not 50%, but it's 55%, because it's 5 out of 9 and not 5 out of 10. So one vote, and this is very simplified, but that is really how the proportional system works. Every vote does count. And if you say we need a new government, if you feel we can't survive under an ANC government anymore, then you must go and vote against the ANC. Otherwise, you are actually voting for the ANC.
Yeah. So before I let you go, what would you like to say to the people who will be heading to the polls? I hope that I'm going to be able to speak with you after the elections.
Definitely, definitely. Let me say that, firstly, I want to once again encourage everybody to go and vote. And no matter what the challenges are, if the queues are long, sacrifice that hour. But that hour might make the difference for 5 years. 5 years is much longer than 1 hour. And go and vote, but vote informed. Go and look at what party you agree with most. You will never find a political party that you agree with 100%. If you do, there might be something wrong. I don't agree with the Freedom Front Plus 100%. But the Freedom Front Plus is the party I agree with most. And that's why it's my political vehicle to make a change. And I ask South Africans to assist myself and my fellow colleagues that are trying to rebuild and restore South Africa to do the same with your cross. Go and vote. But also, if you can volunteer, if you can assist to be an observer at a polling station to make sure that there's nothing that goes wrong, please do that also. Put up your hand, assist us to ensure that the democracy prevails on the 29th of May.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen, from the head of election and the member of parliament for Freedom Front Plus, Mr. Voter versus. Please tell us what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button. And the most important part is subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabaso. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.